Okay, so midpoint and length of the line are related. So the midpoint is in the middle, right? It divides the line in two equal parts. So similar to what we did in the last unit, in grade 9, maybe you guys did lots of table of values and stuff like that. Lots of, graphing that takes a long time. In grade 10, we're trying to show you other ways to sort of streamline different mathematical processes. So this is one of those examples that we'll develop the formula and the idea, and then you'll see how easy, and then when we do equation of the line, how useful finding the midpoint is. Okay, so we're going to plot the points, A and B. We're going to draw the line segment. It doesn't have to be a different color. I didn't realize the font was yellow or green. So when you have a nice simple line like this that follows the axes, then it's easy to count where the midpoint is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the midpoint is in the middle. But if you don't have a nice line, if it's slanted, if you don't have a graph grid, then we need a better way to do this, or a more universal way. Okay, so we're going to calculate the length of the line segment from A to the midpoint and B to the midpoint. So this is 6, 5. And if our estimate of where the midpoint is correct, then if it's cut the line in two equal parts, that means that this length should be equal to this length. So if you have a different color, I'll write the general formula for the length that I quickly tried to do yesterday. Okay, or if you don't have a different color, make a box, use a bubble, make that stand out. Now, do you have to memorize this? No, you get it, okay? So that test formula sheet that's on D2L, that's exactly what you're going to get. So this length formula is really straightforward. As long as you know what the x values are in the two ordered pairs, and you know what the y values are. So don't, and you do know that, right? So don't screw yourself up, okay? Like this is X and this is Y. And when you do this, when you square it, it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, you're going to get a positive answer. So if you hated doing slope because you hated figuring out which one's x2, which one's x1, that doesn't even matter here, because remember, if you square a negative number, you're going to get negative. So you have to make sure your calculator isn't setting you up, okay? Have a good relationship with it so you know how it works. So we're going to do, we have to find the A to the midpoint. So I'm going to call that AM. And B to the midpoint, which I'm going to unfortunately call BM. If it helps you show lots of work, write out what this point is. It is up here in the question, but if you want to emphasize it, rewrite it, it's fine. Okay, so we need, for A, point A and point M, we need the X values. Technically, the midpoint is the second one, but again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you screw this up and you do the X's first or the Y's subtracting, because you're adding, right? And then the Y values, okay, so I'm going to show all my work. So some of you maybe have a fantastic relationship with your calculator and you know how to do the square root with brackets inside brackets and squaring. If you don't, then there's no penalty for showing lots of work, okay? So you don't want to make those annoying math errors, right? So 6 minus 4, 6 minus 2 is 4. 0 squared. Square root of 4 squared. Now, some of you may even recognize the squared and the squared will cancel out, but it's not always going to be so nice. So I'll just keep going, okay? Yes. They do. So when the numbers are nice like this, it's easy to figure out. So you're right. You could have skipped this. Okay, so for B and M, we have 10 minus 6. And now we know we want it to be equal. We're trying to prove that they should be equal. So this is 4, so it looks like we're on the right track. And 5 and 5 again. Okay, so they are equal. But even this, we can streamline. So basically, you're just looking for the halfway point of the x values and the halfway point of the y values. The midpoint formula is weird only in that we set it up as an ordered pair, okay? So what we're going to do is this is ordered pair notation. We're looking for what's the x value and what's the y value, okay? Yes. Say that again. Here? No. So if that's why this is weird. Eventually, we want to get an x value and a y value. So this is going to solve for the x, and then this is going to solve for the y. We're going to get an ordered pair, okay? So the formula itself is easy to use, but yes, the notation is a little bit weird. Do you need to memorize this midpoint formula? No. Yes. Yes, because we're going to make an ordered pair. You're going to find an x value and a y value, okay? Okay, so now let's find the midpoint, but you don't have to draw the line. Usually we just go in alphabetical order, okay? So if it says, if you're given A and B, then this A is alphabetically before B. So x1, y1, x2, y2. But again, if you're adding, does it really matter? No, okay? So if that stresses you out, try not to stress too much, okay? So we're going to find the midpoint. Okay, so again, I'm going to show all my work. Maybe you can do the -2 plus 6 and then divide it by 2 in one step. But again, there are some unfriendly calculators out there. So some of you will have to do -2 plus 6, push equals, and then do the divide, okay? So you really have to get to know your calculator. But I'm going to show all my work, okay? So -2 plus 6 is 4. still divided by 2 because we're finding the midpoint, right? The half, it's always going to be over 2. 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5 over 2. So now you have a decision. Usually what happens is if you don't have to do anything with the midpoint, like if it's just paper and pencil, then you can leave it like this. This is going to be a decimal, or you can make it a decimal, okay? In this unit, it doesn't really matter. Okay? Negative 2.5 wouldn't be too bad to graph, but obviously repeating decimals would be. So if I asked you to graph a midpoint, then you would want to have, it would be a nice value, okay? So now B says calculate the distance. This is another word for find the length, or the length of the line between those 2 points. So you are just using the length or distance formula. But here is a problem, okay? So this is why, again, those of you that don't have a calculator that puts negatives in brackets, then this can be a little bit unfortunate. So it's subtract, but the value is negative. So I would write down, when you sub it in brackets, because then this becomes six plus 2, right? Okay. Oh, I just did. You know what? Sorry, guys. Yeah, just change it to A to B. Doesn't matter. Sorry. I used A and B. Don't matter. So there you go. Read the question carefully. I don't have this answer. And remember, negative 11 squared is positive 121. You can't get a negative. Now, let's say I forgot and I put this negative. You would get a negative under the square root. Can you do that? No. Okay. So when you get this kind of question, you could find the midpoint, and then you could do the length of the whole line, the length of the midpoint to A, the length of the midpoint to B with the same information. So there's lots you can do with very little information. So midpoint and length themselves are not super difficult. One of the things we're going to do with midpoint and length and slope as well is figure out what kind of shape we have. So we will talk about what kind of triangle is it and what kind of quadrilateral it is. So this unit actually doesn't really have word problems per se. It'll be more like the next example. I think this is actually the only unit that doesn't have word problems at the end. Like traditional, word problems. Okay? They'll be like this. We are going to try to prove the properties of geometric figures. So we have the coordinates of the vertices, which are like the points of a rectangle, are given. So it says draw the rectangle. If you're given this and you have to draw it, that would be worth marks, okay? On the separate piece of paper. Yeah, so this is where it got messed up, sorry. I don't know what happened. Okay, everybody has a separate piece of paper? Do you don't have one, Keith? Does anybody have an extra? Did you take more than one? Okay. Amazing. I was going to say, I can print you one, but when you draw a shape, I recommend that you label them A, B, C, D. It'll help you later, okay? Sometimes the question will tell you what the shape is, so it says that this should be, and I just screwed up this point, a rectangle. Okay, so if you don't get a rectangle, then go back and check. Try to pick it up. Okay, so some of the questions are just straight up, prove the shape is a rhombus, prove a shape is a parallelogram or whatever. Sometimes the questions will talk about diagonals, okay? So they're getting fancy. So if you want, diagonal is like this, right? So you go from one vertice to the other. So when you draw it in, it will help you. So even without a ruler, even if you did, your best estimate, if we have the diagonals and their halfway point, what should be true about them? Are they going to be the same, equal, or the same, different? What are they? In this picture, what do you think? Yeah. So let's say you did not a super great picture. You made a little estimates. Maybe my photocopy is terrible. You can't see the grid. Now we can do the math to prove it, okay? So we're going to do, and again, normally we just go alphabetical. We're going to find the midpoint of AC and the midpoint of BD, okay? But it doesn't really matter because we're adding. So if you do DB and CA, that's fine too, okay? It says midpoint. Could you find the length? Yes, but it does not matter which one you do first either. I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm just started with A. A alpha is alphabetically first, okay? Supposed to be a Y. Again, if you hate x1, x2, that always bugs you, then label it, okay? Go up here, x1, y1, and then alphabetically, C is next, so I'm going to call that x2, y2, okay? That can help. And again, in a question like this, it doesn't really ask us to draw or graph the midpoint, so maybe you just want to leave it as a fraction. You can make that a decimal. It is 0.5, so you can kind of see that it's like 0.5, right? Okay, but again, when maybe you've estimated, maybe the grid's hard to see. Yes. Now, if you like your notes to be colorful, pick another color, okay? And then we're going to do BD, go and label B and D, X1, Y1, X2, Y2, to help you, because now we're going to do this line, what's the midpoint? And remember, it should be the same as this. So we're trying to prove that, right, mathematically. Okay. So they're the same. Excellent. So in this unit, this is the kind of like word problem, basically, just trying to verify the figure, okay? So it does take a little bit of math, but you don't have to make your own equations or anything like that. You don't really have to interpret it like you would in a normal word problem. Okay. The other kind of sort of, weird inquiry question you could be asked. So this time we are given the midpoint and we're given the end point and we have to find the other end point, okay? So we the line is called EF and that's I took this right from here. Okay? So we have the midpoint and we have X1 and Y1, okay? So we are looking for X2 and Y2. So because of the notation, it's a little bit weird how you solve this, okay? So I'm just going to plug in what we know. So we know the midpoint. That goes over here. And we have X1. We don't have X2. We have Y1. We don't have Y2. So because of the weird notation of the midpoint formula, this looks like, how am I going to solve this? This is impossible. But it's actually not too bad, okay? So because the midpoint, this is the answer, right? This gives us this, and this gives us this, okay? So I'm even going to draw a line. I'm going to split my page, okay? So when we have this, that's going to be the x value of the midpoint. What is the x value of the midpoint? -3. This, the y part, gives us the y value. What's the y value? 4. So again, this weird notation is because it's trying to get us an ordered pair. So this is annoying to solve because there's a fraction. So, but it's always, always, always going to be over 2. Some of you will just look at this and in your brain think, like some people will even say things like, I'm going to bring the 2 up. Some people will use the term cross multiply. There are math teachers who don't like that term. So, but what you can do is follow the same procedure that you've been doing to clear the fractions as before, okay? So if I want to clear this fraction of the 2, what do I have to do? Good. Multiply by 2. Can I just do this? No. Don't forget to multiply the other side by 2, okay? So these cancel. And now this is a pretty straightforward equation to solve. The x is on the left or on the right. That's no big deal. If you start moving things around, you just have to be careful of the signs, okay? So I'm just going to move the 1. If it's positive here, when I move it, it's going to be negative or subtract. Okay, since it is midpoint, it is always, mid is middle, right? The middle is divide by 2. It is always going to be a fraction over 2. Yes. Because on this side it cancels. So now, depending on when you move forward, how particular your teacher is, they could want you to say, like, not writing it like this isn't good enough. You should put it in an ordered pair, like, you know, those communication marks. But for me, I don't mind. If I can clearly tell what the x value is and what the y value is, that's good enough for me, okay? Okay, so I'm even going to streamline the homework. I want you to start at number 2, okay? I fixed it on D2L. In the chart, it's already started at 2. If you want to fix your note, 2 to 6 and then 9. If you think this is easy and straightforward, great. Practice as much as you can, and then this assessment will be bring your mark up, okay? Now, because we just reviewed length, and I know yesterday we didn't finish it all, so turn your page. Let's just quickly finish up the length, and then you'll have time to do work. And then after the break, we'll do circle, which is also very straightforward. Then you'll have time to do work before lunch and time to do work after lunch, okay? But let's just finish up the other one. So now your booklet is good. So if I caught you, I scratched out the 2.1 that was in the booklet. If I didn't and you want to do that, that's fine. Now you're going to turn the page to 2.2 in the booklet. And the rest of the booklet is good to go, okay?